Good morning, Boker Tov. I'm Moshe Tatar. I'm the director of the School of Education. We would like to give a warming welcome and good morning to Mr. Morton Mandel, Chairman and CEO of the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation, to Professor Menachem Ben-Sasson, President of the Hebrew University, Professor Yuda Reinhardt, President of the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation, to our Rector, Professor Asher Cohen, to the Vice President and Director General of the Hebrew University, Billy Shapira, to the Vice President, Ambassador Yossi Gal, to Professor Mark Hirschman, to Dr. Samir Alian, to Mr. Steve Hoffman, Vice Chairman of Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation, to Moshe Victor, the CEO of the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation in Israel, and of course, to Annette Ochstein. Welcome to all of you. Dear colleagues and friends, it's our pleasure to welcome all of you to the ceremony of the dedication of the Morton Mandel Chair for the Director of the School of Education and the inauguration of the Seymour Fox Library. Let me at the beginning thank all of the many people that were involved in the preparation of this ceremony in all its aspects. In the mission statement of the Mandel Foundation, we read, "The hallmark of our philanthropy is our commitment to invest in people with the values, ability, and passion to change the world." These are definitively three of the pillars that can encourage school success and social change. Values, ability, passion. This VAP is the real VIP track in education. There are certain values that are positive and constructive and lead to character traits that are ethical virtues. These values and corresponding virtues will in fact be the key to creating a good life, a successful and happy life academically, personally, and professionally. According to Seligman, 6 fundamental virtues values preserved across all cultures and historical time periods at the individual level. Wisdom, that is curiosity, love of learning. Courage, that is perseverance, integrity. Love and humanity, that is kindness, generosity. Temperance, that is modesty, humility. Justice, that is good citizenship, fairness. And transcendence, gratitude, and hope. Seligman's central psychological argument is that authentic happiness is built upon the exercise and development of these character virtues. And this basic formula seems to be universal for all human beings. At the institutional level, we embrace the value of excellence, our endless pursuit of academic excellence. But since we really believe that education can make a difference, and it is maybe the only way to challenge and reduce social, economic, and cultural gaps within the Israeli society, we also put forward the importance and relevance of social justice, multiculturalism, equal opportunities as values and as pivotal objectives we aspire to attain. That is for values. Now, what about ability? In our opinion, one of the most important abilities we need to identify and nurture in educators is the ability to lead educational institutions. To lead, and this is done by transformative leaders. We need school leaders who promote the learning and growth of all students by cultivating a strong culture of teaching and learning, setting ambitious goals, while the educational system should ensure that teachers have the resources, the training, and the support to achieve them. Our schools need also a shared leadership through expanding the number of people involved in making important decisions related to the school's organization, operation, and academics. This shared leadership entails the creation of roles and decision-making opportunities for teachers, staff members, students, parents, and community members. And by doing that, we will allow the different voices in the educational system to be echoed. Values, ability, passion. Bill Smoot, in his book, Conversations with Great Teachers, concluded that although he still could not formulate a definition of a great teacher, he could, however, to identify or to see common qualities among them. One of the main qualities of great teachers is passion. One of the teachers interviewed said, "If you don't love teaching, you ought to be doing something else." For great teachers, he found that teaching is a calling, something they must do to feed their souls. When he asked a first grade teacher why he chose teaching, she paused and said, "I think teaching chose me." Their passion of these great teachers is not only for the activity of teaching, but also for the ends it serves. Great teachers have humility in knowing that they serve a purpose larger than themselves. They reminded the words of the great poet Basho that said, "Don't follow in the footsteps of the old poets. Seek what they sought." The passion of these teachers was not only for their students, but also for the content they taught. The best teachers are the ones who are able to communicate their passion for the subject to the student. Because great teachers are passionate about the content of their teaching, the word excellence is never far away. If you create an atmosphere of excellence, those who want to be excellent will rise to it. The mission of our School of Education is to develop and disseminate science in the service of society. Our vision includes the advancement of educational knowledge through basic research in educational science and through the development of applied research that has both practical and theoretical importance. In addition, we aspire to introduce programs and interventions into the field that will make a difference in the educational system, and to train students as researchers, as creators of knowledge, and as high-quality practitioners who will apply the principles and practices they have acquired at the Hebrew University. We will work hard to provide all what is needed by the students to become high-quality teachers and reflective educators in the various subject matters specializations. Thus, our School of Education aims to stand for the highest quality of educational research and teaching and to make a significant impact on the related professional communities and on the Israeli society. We will foster the values, cultivate the leadership, and work with the passion inspired by you, Mr. Morton Mandel, and by the legacy of Professor Seymour Fox. Thank you, Mr. Mandel, for your great donation and generosity, and that together with others make it possible to honor the memory of Professor Fox by naming our school the Seymour Fox School of Education. We are very enthusiastic and feel privileged. Personally, I feel proud that this event takes place during my directorship term. It's a tremendous honor that I'll become the first who holds the Morton Mandel Chair as the director of the Seymour Fox School of Education. Look, I immigrated from Peru 36 years ago, taught almost 30 years in secondary school in parallel to my academic work here. My wife is the director of the School for Deaf Children in Jerusalem. So believe me, I and all of us are really and totally committed to the mission of our school and to education. When I left Peru, I visited my grandmother for the last time. She pressed my hand very hard and blessed me by saying that she's sure I'll enjoy living in Israel, that I'll need to work hard all my life to make my living. But remember, she told me in Yiddish, always, she pressed my hand, sei ein Mensch. I'm quite sure that if she would be able to attend this ceremony today, she will be extremely proud. And I'm quite sure that she would tell me, Moshe, not Professor, Moshe, I'm so proud that you are the Morton Mandel Director of the Seymour Fox School of Education, but still, don't forget, and even more now, sei ein Mensch. Thank you. תודה רבה. It's my pleasure to invite Professor Menachem Ben-Sasson, President of the Hebrew University, to address the audience. Please.
Moshe, it's good that you are not here. Being the first incumbent is a commitment, a mission, but at the same time, nobody who hasn't proved himself to be a leader couldn't get it. Happily enough, you are one of the leaders of the Hebrew University. You are one of 3 professors in the management committee of the Hebrew University, a responsibility for a whole university. I report to this committee. Moshe, I report to you. And I'm going to report to the committee. Being a mensch is also being the first incumbent for Mort Mandel for this chair. It's great that you are a teacher. Myself likewise. I just left high school from teaching a few years ago, and still the position is there because maybe you don't want me. In one of the times I can go back with Moshe to teach in high school. There is a change. There are startups made 90 years ago, and there are re-startups that are made today. We are going to have series of lectures, many meetings, another ceremony and another ceremony. Not by chance, the first step in making this school to its new phase, to the new startup of the school, is today, with the chair. A precedent for such a chair at the university, an involvement of the donor with the content of the place, and the name that the chair carries and the school carries at the same time create a unique combination. When I came first to the school, knowing, not allowed to say, that there is something showing the way to others to invest in this endeavor, School of Education, new phase, I was at that time in tears, as in today. The faculty said there, maybe 30 members of the school, and I said, there is no other unit that is promised at that time. I said I couldn't reveal any figure that is promised now not only to go to the depth of its meaning, and the rector is involved, and the chair of the committee of review research on units at the university, but you're the first to have also the money needed to make a known unit. It was a hint. I was moved because I know the figure around. I was more than in knowledge that there are others to follow. But at that time, it was an enigma. Moshe knew something about it. Others didn't have any clue. I'm right, Itamar. And now it becomes another, and another, and another. And this school is going not only to have a dream, but only a very small leg from the dream to the execution of it. Thanks to your leadership, thanks to friends of Seymour Fuchs, thanks to the first generous step of yourself, Mort. Yes, I came to blame you. And in order to do it properly, I use your words. In 1998, 88, excuse me, page 110. It's all about who. The who of many pages. After a meeting in Jerusalem, says Mott, of new Jewish Agency Committee on Jewish Education, which I chaired, Simo and I found ourselves walking back to King David Hotel, deeply engaged in discussing what we might be able to do on our own. We stood in the front of the hotel and there decided to create a foundation. Hear me well. Foundation Mendel, foundation in Israel. You thought that it's Genesis. The world started with it, 1988, historically dated, by the man who established it. Headquarters and offices in Jerusalem to seek ways to train the next generation of Jewish education leaders. Let's build an IBM, Mott. I said, you say. An institution that could be one of the best in the world for our own cause. Education. That's your word. What is, if not startup, investing in education with Simo? And then it goes to describe Simo's initiatives, endeavor, character, hopes that you had, buildings, not of brick and mortar, but new concept of education, all in these 3 pages and other places in the book. Wisely so, you couldn't say it, so you sent us to read few lines from David Ellenson. You call him rabbi, for me he's rabbi and professor, longtime friend from the Hebrew College of New York, and a friend of us at the Hebrew University. I cite now Ellenson in order to put together in one link, and that's in the book. But it's not Mott's words. He made it cited in the book. He took it from Ellenson's words. You couldn't meet Simo and not being impressed by his vast knowledge in philosophy, education, classical Judaism. He was indefatigable, much like Mott. They were both intelligent, highly motivated, high energy people with the infinite love for Jewish people. Simo was very impressive. You couldn't escape his intelligence when you were in his presence, even for a second. Mott told me, says Ellenson, the story of one experience. There is one story of his experience that sold him on Simo shortly after Simo was assigned to him. Before the first meeting of National Commission on Jewish Education, which Mott was to chair, Mott came, as the usual, in the meeting room early to make sure that everything was set up right. Now, those of us who remember Simo in the time of visits of Mott in Jerusalem, remember now the coming 3 lines. So Mott came early. Simo was ready, had beaten him to the punch. He was there reviewing every detail. End of quote. Mott and Simo. Simo and Mott. From time to time, you do not need a mirror. When Mott talks, think about the years that Simo was the president of the foundation. Think of the years that Simo changed all Israeli curriculum. Many of us enjoyed it. From these headquarters, School of Education, think of the power of the who can make the what and how. That's what we are going to celebrate today. So yes, it is about the new IBM. It's an old School of Education, very much experienced, but committed to a new agenda. And the combination, the partnership between Mendel, the school, and the future, and the leadership of the university is committed to this change. We should be happy having this first step, And believe me, you won't believe what becomes after. This school is going to flourish, and everybody in Israel and abroad is going to enjoy the results. Think of the future leaders of Mandel Foundation, both in Israel and in the world. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure to invite Professor Asher Cohen, Rector of the Hebrew University, to address the audience.
Mr. Mort Mandel, Menachem, Billy, Yehuda, Moshe, dear esteemed colleagues and friends, Annette, and all the others, and esteemed colleagues and friends. I started being a little bit informal because I look behind me at one of the most magnificent views that you can ever see. And it's really appropriate to have this ceremony here with this background in front of us. I don't need to tell this audience how important education is for all of us. It's not even worth living without education. And it has been important throughout all the generations and all the years. But you know, one sometimes thinks that it's even more important nowadays. We are facing a lot of challenges. We are going through transformations in our society, in our culture, in our economy. And the core that we need for all of this is education. And I don't need to tell this audience about it, you all know about it. But it's worth mentioning it again. And in order to carry on and provide the education that we all need, we need leadership. Again, we all know that, but it's very, very important to emphasize how leadership is important in promoting education, in making sure that education is provided for all who need it, and we all need it. And so, we have here the School of Education that has done it throughout the years, and now we are making sure that it will continue to do it even more vigorously with Moshe. Professor Moshe Tatar, who by the way is also an avid fan of the most socialist football team in our country. Leadership is a key ingredient in all of this, and the School of Education will do it. But it does it with people, Moshe. And Menachem mentioned Seymour Fox. I didn't know Seymour Fox, but I know that he was a great leader of education. And so we are all proud that his name is now part of the school. And let me turn a little bit of my attention to you, Mort. You just reminded me again that you did your minor in education and your major in English to have some living. But what you did in education is, even the word major would not really contain or describe what you did. We want to think about Mort Mandel. I often think about the immense contribution that he and his foundation and the people around him did for the humanities. And sometimes we overlook the fact that he's just as a major force in education. Just a few years ago, we even gave you a major prize for your contribution to education. And what you do now is yet one more important step in the great deeds that you do for education, and we all appreciate it very, very, very much. So, the future is bright. All we have to do is to do what we need to do with leadership, with commitment, and do the right things. Thank you.
It can be Moshe, Ingale, Zizale, whatever you want. She had many ways to name me, to call me. Okay, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Samira Alian from the Department of Teacher Education at our School of Education, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Moshe Tatar, for inviting me here today. My name is Samira Alian. I'm teaching at the Department of Education in the Hebrew University. I teach sociology of education and analysis textbooks to student teachers. And I want to thank Mr. Mendel for being here today with us and believing with my ability, because I was also a graduate of the cohort 10 of the Mendel School of Educational Leadership, created by Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mendel, who believed that they were investing in people with values, ability, and patience to change the world. I again repeat, we will repeat this sentence all the time. Me, Moshe, everybody work in this education school. At the Mendel School, I have the privilege to study with Professor Simon Fox, who influenced me with his educational vision and beliefs. And the vision of theirs strengthened my belief that education in general and teacher training in particular is the key to creating deep and meaningful change in people and society and the world. Education can be used for a good and bad, either to create environment to make peace or to incite to war and destroy civilization. The most important part of my work is training new teachers. Why is this so important to me? Because teacher training institution can mold a generation to educators who are committed to justice and progress, and at the same time can maintain traditional and history and the beauty of many different cultures. In my opinion, training teachers to be excellent is the best tool for creating a more humane, egalitarian society and for helping students to fulfill their full potential. Many studies have shown that investment in teacher training programs bring real, true result for education system and at the same time makes civil society stronger. It is our most important resource for increasing student achievement and for creating quality and value-based education. It is also the basis for creating and maintaining integration of all cultural groups into Israeli society, and for teaching tolerance and respect for each other, so that eventually we may honestly call ourselves a multicultural society. A multicultural integrated society, that is how I understand the goal of the educational system that the Hebrew University strives for. I believe that the way to achieve this society is through training teachers to be open-minded and to be able to listen to all the voices of all cultures around us, and also to create textbooks that reflect the reality of this multiculturalism. Let me say that not every teacher training institution makes its a priority to train teachers to effect change in the system and to promote critical thinking in their students. Hebrew University, however, is at the forefront of this change. It stresses academic excellence according to the international standard in one hand, and on the other, it is in touch with reality and totally involved with the society it wishes to educate and influence. A good example of this is that both staff and student are mixed Arab and Jewish. The Hebrew University can be a real meeting place for discussion and getting to know each other. The academic setting has the potential to provide everyone with opportunities to overcome the very complex situation if they have the will to do so. The hope is that these new teachers will be able to understand this complexity and translate it to something positive for their student when they go out into the field. There is a fast-growing shift for traditional teaching, one that sees the teacher as a soul of knowledge, to a learning environment based on critical thinking and significant learning, teaching, and research. This kind of study allowed the student to express him or herself and their talents and to increase their perception, knowledge, and language. I am now another link in the chain of the Mendel vision and the Mendel graduate unit who wish to effect change in Israel today by placing their graduate in key position in the educational and social fields. The Mendel Graduate Unit, one of the kind institution, believes in lifelong learning as a never-ending process, and therefore encourage and supports its graduates to continue to study, influence, and lead. I'm proud and happy to be part of this endeavor here at the Hebrew University and a graduate of the Mendel School, teaching student teachers, analysis textbook and curricula to be implemented in many parts of the Middle East and in the world, overseeing educational projects designed to influence students, mind and soul, and trying to promote as such as possible both critical thinking and integration between Arab and Jews in all these areas. Thank you so much for all of you. Thank you, Mr. Mendel, again.
Thank you, Samira. Thank you very much. It's our pleasure to invite Professor Mark Hirschman, Mandel Professor of Jewish Education, from the Melton Center for Jewish Education to deliver his lecture entitled Sliding Pay Scales, Teachers and Artisans in Jewish Late Antiquity.
Mike Roseneck, Alav Shalom, used to like to say, I want to say a few things before I start speaking. So one of the first things I learned from Seymour's teacher, Joseph Schwab, was that a teacher should never teach with a window behind him. And right he was, so I won't even try to. But the other part of that is, it's hard without looking at this scene, without recalling yesterday's tragedy and remembering the memory of Hadar Cohen, who gave her life, so that we can sit here quietly. So it's moving. This is a big occasion for all of us. Let me begin. I began with Barbara, not knowing she'd not be here. Let me keep it in here. Is that okay with you? Barbara and Morton Mendel, the Fox family, sorry, President Ben Sasson, Rector Cohen, all the distinguished members of the Mendel School and Foundation, Professor Tatar, colleagues and friends. It's a privilege to share learning with you on this wonderful occasion of the dedication of the Mandel Chair for the Director of the School of Education in the soon-to-be named Seymour Fox School and the housing of Seymour's collection here at our library. Professor Tatar is an excellent inaugural incumbent, having skillfully and wisely charted the course of our school over these past years, re-energizing the academic field of education. The Mandel emphasis on leadership is fully embodied in Moshe's prudent yet bold leadership. It's been my honor to be the Mandel Professor of Jewish Education for over a decade and a half. I followed in the footsteps of Michael Roseneck, Zichrono Livracha, who was certainly one of the most influential figures in the shaping of the academic field of Jewish education. We'll study something about craftsmen now. Read a short story from the rabbinic Midrash on Ecclesiastes. The book of Ecclesiastes had a sober yet joyous view of both life and religion. And Ecclesiastes' unorthodox views challenged generations of religious thinkers in Judaism and Christianity for over 2 millennia. This biblical book had wide appeal to existentialist philosophy of the past century and continues to resonate strongly in our own so-called postmodern era. We join this 6th century midrash with its comment on what might be taken to be a very discouraging rhetorical question by Ecclesiastes. After listing the 28 seasons for everything, to everything there is a season, you know the song, everything and its opposite, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to embrace, a time to resist embracing, a time to love, a time to hate. Kohelet sums it up at 3:9 and says, "What value then can the man of affairs get from what he earns? What's in it for me? How can one, given the vicissitudes of time, know how to invest? Isn't it futile?" The Midrash launches into a paean to craftsmanship and relates the following story. The handout is in front of you, or most of you, and the original is on the flip side, soon to be published, hopefully anyway. I read the story with you. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, number 1, was studying Torah as much as he could in a cave at Tiberias. You see in my footnote, Glassworks might be a better translation, the glass foundry at Tiberias. And a potter used to prepare a drink of water for him every day. He used to come in feeling tired and take and drink the water. On one occasion, the man entered, sat down by the rabbi, and stayed with him a short while. He said to him, "Master, do you remember that you and I used to go to school together? But whereas you were an achiever, or were worthy, I was not. Pray for me, that my portion may be with you in the world to come." The rabbi replied to him and said, "How can I pray for you, since it will be your lot to go with your fellow craftsmen? Because they do not allow a man to dwell except with his fellow craftsmen." Strange story. Let me talk about it for a minute. This vignette pulsates with the throb of life in the outskirts of 3rd century Tiberias. Scholars have been puzzled by the Greek word alesis, which is translated here cave. More likely is Lieberman's translation glassworks, meaning Shimon ben Lakish, the great rabbi, used to do his Torah study in the industrial section of Tiberias. That's what Lieberman would have us believe. Now, taking Lieberman's lead, others translated it forest or street, nobody really knows. Taking Lieberman's lead, the great Shimon ben Lakish studies in what seems to be a bustling area of Tiberias. Much like nowadays, a novelist such as Aaron Appelfeld writes his works in coffee shops. In my early academic days, they told me that the great linguist Yechezkel Kutcher was also reputed to do his academic work in a coffee shop. The potter reminds the rabbi of their childhood, when they went to school in the synagogue together and how their paths had diverged. He begs the rabbi to pray for him so that he will rejoin the rabbi in the world to come. We began together, let's finish in the better world together also. The rabbi answers curtly, the people in the world to come are accounted. This is a different translation than what you have. They're accounted. The reckoning is within your craft, within your guild. You're judged according to the people you work with, you labor with. Now, You are judged, if you wish, the rabbi says, your place in the world to come is achieved by the leadership in your own field, in your own trade, in your own business. I would guess that the story, and this is how I teach it, still gives pride of place to the scholar. But recently, one of my better students offered a very egalitarian reading of this story. Everybody's got their place. You can achieve it by yourself. You don't need a rabbi to get you in there. One has to devote oneself fully to one's craft, to one's business, to one's trade, and try to excel. We can certainly say that Seymour Fox's leadership in education was the gold standard of the field. He brought a gravitas to this field. It was my pleasure and challenge to have studied with Seymour 45 years ago and to have maintained a friendship with him, a Talmid Chaver, with my fellow Windy City native. I would like to end with another passage, here only in the English from our Midrash, in honor of the Mendels and their unsurpassed devotion and dedication to education, society, and scholarship. This will also be unusual. I read number 2 with you. I have seen the tasks, says Ecclesiastes, which Raiti Tainyan, which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. The English doesn't say very much. Raiti Tainyan asher tadarim livnei adam la'anot bo. Rabbi Aibo said, this is the peculiarity, or I would say affliction is a better translation. This is the affliction of wealth. For Rabbi Judan said in the name of Rabbi Aibo, nobody departs from the world with half his desire gratified. And Adam yotzei min olam hazeh v'chatzi ta'avato biyado. If he has 100, he wants 2. And if he has 200, he wants 4. To be exercised, Rabbi Joshua said, if a man is worthy and uses his wealth in accordance with the precepts of the Torah, when he prays, he is answered. That is what is stated. My righteousness will answer for me. I'd like to just say our blessing is that the Mendels continue with their investment in education and society here and in the USA for many years to come.
Thank you, Menachem. We would like to invite the audience to view a short film in dedication to Mort Mandel.
Our students look at the future.
Morton Mandel is an inspiration to all of us working in the field of education. Inspired by Mandel's vision, we asked some of our students to share their educational hopes and dreams.
If you asked me to sum up everything I know in the fewest words, I would do it in just 4. It's all about who? Morton Mandel.
We want to work toward a better quality of life in Israel, so we are investing heavily in education. Morton Mandel.
Where would you like to see the education system in 10-15 years? I'd like to see a system that allows the students to transcend the boundaries of the cultural world from which they come.
The education system must place great emphasis on the child's emotional and social abilities. My vision is of schools that do not view students as they were viewed a century ago when the IQ test was invented, but schools that are aware of the children's diverse abilities.
I think that a system based on trust becomes much more fruitful. I think that if we introduce this value into the system, we will achieve an improvement, both in terms of the teaching in the schools themselves and in the external system and environment. I want there to be narrower gaps in the level and quality of education received by different groups of students in Israel. I would like to see an education system that is more tolerant, with more professional teachers who have greater knowledge and can really be meaningful figures for their students.
I think the most important thing that needs to happen is stressing the whole issue of giving personal attention to each child.
What significant change in the education system will lead to an improvement of education in Israel? I think the first change we need is smaller classes. Every teacher I have ever spoken to who said her school was great and gave students opportunities worked in a school that offered personal mentoring and individual attention to each child. I think education standards need to be improved. Teaching should be at a much higher level.
A change I would like to see in the education system is one that will introduce students to people who are unlike themselves. I think that the encounter in itself will create acceptance toward people who think differently.
A change that must occur in the education system is introducing the subject of economics or correct financial management into the core curriculum.
I think we need anything that will allow school teachers to get to know their students better. Teachers are very preoccupied with measuring, assessing, filling out forms, and regarding the child as an object for assessment, less concerned with the child as an individual whom they encounter at school and whom they want to help develop.
A thing that amazes me is that in weekly sessions of the Knesset Education Committee, the teachers are not present. They talk about the teachers and what they teach and what they have to deal with, but they don't ask the teacher's opinion. I think that a change in the system's attitude towards the teachers is a critical step that must be taken soon. I want to change the world. Specifically, I also want to change Israel, and the way we are doing it is by investing in people who have the desire, the ability, the passion to change the world. Morton Mendel.
Where do you see yourself changing the education system? I would like to establish a teacher training facility in which teachers will be able to acquire practical abilities that are not pedagogical, but rather therapeutic.
I am taking part in a pilot project where I train in educational counseling. I hope this is the beginning of a change.
My research deals with identifying signs of distress in teens on social media. Of course, the internet has its dangers, and I do not ignore them, but my approach is more pragmatic. I think our teenagers are there, so we have to be there too. I think that my role is to provide educational counseling or advise the education system. I personally deal with education research and philosophy. I think this is the key to any kind of change, trying to see how the mechanisms work on a very deep level, and trying to see how a cog can be moved or transformed.
What are the ways to recruit the best people for the education system? In order to recruit the best people for the education system, we need, first of all, to increase salaries, and second, to improve the social image of the teaching and education professions.
People who want to make a change want to be given an opportunity to make that change. A person who feels that the system might trap him in a tangle of supervision and bureaucracy, or a situation that denies him the authority to make the change he yearns for, and bring it into the system, such a person is unlikely to enter the system.
The minute this profession will be seen by society as prestigious, people will no longer be ashamed to say, I am going to train as a teacher. They will say it with pride. There needs to be an investment of resources and an improvement in education. To recruit serious people, we need to seek them in places where people engage in education. We should take people who are active in youth movements or people who have dealt with education and encourage them to become teachers.
This method, where you have a psychometric grade and a matriculation grade, the method must be different. Recruitment of teachers should be through people with clinical and therapeutic abilities.
Instead of thinking, yes, I can, we're often taught, no, I can't. Leadership starts by saying, yes, I can. Morton Mendel.
What are the main values that should characterize a leader in the field of education?
I think that a woman leader in the field of education must first of all cherish values of equality and social justice. These values will lead her to promote not only the boy or girl who are already sharp-witted and talented and know what they want to become, but any child in the classroom. I think that a leader in education is a person who knows how to delegate authority, knows how to prompt cooperation among teachers, how to initiate processes that engage the teachers. Let's take an example of a teacher, a good teacher who educates the children and helps them develop their independent learning skills so that they become their own teachers. That, in my opinion, is an example of educational leadership. A school principal who gives his teachers space and the tools and qualifications they need, allowing them to develop as teachers and become better teachers and educators, that, in my eyes, is an educational leader.
My goal is to use the human and financial capital at our disposal to change the world. The torch is in my hand, and I intend to hold it as high as I can, for as long as I can. Morton Mendel.
Thank you to the students. Some of them are here, I think, seeing themselves for the first time. No? Okay. In English. Great. Okay. Thank you. It's my pleasure to invite again Professor Menachem Ben-Sasson to present an award dedication to Mr. Morton Mandel. Professor Ben-Sasson will then give about the Einstein facsimile. Okay, just a second. In this facsimile, Einstein writes on the role of professor and students alike to shape the spirit of their time, as Professor Gamble is doing, instead of standing aside and letting such voices to be silenced.
Please. It's in German, but there is a deciphering in English, and then there is also a commentary on it. And it's quite a long description of how things should be done in education.
But Yiddish.
It's the same. Yiddish in German is not the same. Yiddish in German is not the same. What? Please. We would like to ask Mr. Morton-Mandel to say a few words. I'll put it back in
You
there.
don't have a choice.
No, you don't.
Thank you, Menachem. Friends, I know many of you, and people who are interested in a better world, which I am. I want to first thank all the people who said such nice things about me and my colleagues and my family. Most of what you said is true. And I'm very grateful for the recognition that our foundation and our staff is receiving for doing what I believe is probably, I say probably because I don't have a scientific analysis, the most important thing that my brothers and I have ever done in the philanthropic world. We formed our foundation in 1953. That's a lot of years in which we have been trying to optimize the way we've used our resources, our financial resources. And it's, in a way, I think of a funnel and putting all sorts of programs and projects into the funnel, and what comes out at the bottom is our effort to achieve a better world, our effort to improve the quality of life. That's our mission. That's what we're dedicated to. We see education as one of the pathways, maybe the most important pathway. But I want people in this country and in my country, and I guess maybe the whole world, to have a better quality of life. We know how to do all the things it takes. We just need to educate people to understand that there are ways to do that. A few words about Seymour. I first met Seymour in 1985. Actually, he was working with my wife, Barbara, who is a devoted supporter of Hebrew University and who was honored herself recently by being named honorary chairman of the board. Barbara at that time was national president of the National Jewish, National, let's see, NC, National Council of Jewish Women. And Seymour Fox was her consultant, and I came back to our hotel room, and Seymour was there, and he was introduced. And I was a member of the Jewish Agency Board. I was in charge of a foundation. I wanted some guidance. I asked Seymour if he would help. And that started a relationship that's, I think, led to the Mendel School for Educational Leadership, about which I will talk in a minute or two. What happened was that the Jewish Agency had a program. We didn't like that program. They wanted to discontinue the program. We took it over. It was the Jerusalem Fellows Program. Seymour was then the dean of the School of Education, took a leave of absence, and he and I had this memorable walk and decided to form a foundation in Israel in 1990. And that was the beginning of a formal process that's led till today. And I want to conclude with what I said earlier in my comments. The Mendel School for Educational Leadership is one of many initiatives that we have been involved with. I don't want to pass a grade, but I would think that it's certainly a candidate for, and maybe the most important thing we've ever done, because we think the way to solve or attack the world's problems is by creating or helping to create people who already are great when they come to us. And ideally, as you've heard, probably many of you educators, during the 2 years they are with us, that we will do no harm. But hopefully, it will be a good experience. Seymour was the basic designer of that system. We hired another consultant named Annette Huckstein, and at some point in time, we invited her to join us. She refused to join us because she was running an independent consulting firm. And I said, well, how about if we buy your business? She said, oh, okay, that will do. So we bought all kind of furniture and I don't know what that we didn't need. But the team that really built this institution, the Mendel School for Educational Leadership, the team that built that was Seymour and Annette, and I tried again to help any way I could. And I know that Seymour, who left us a few years ago, sadly, if he knew where the Mendel School for Educational Leadership was today, he'd be very proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mort. Okay, so I would like to invite all of us to the ribbon cutting ceremony of the Seymour Fox Library that is at my right hand there. Thank you very much for attending this ceremony, and thank you, Mort. Thank you very much. Toda rabba.